Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today's video is going to be something so exciting. We are going to be talking about the new Charlotte Tilbury holiday collection. We do have a number of releases this year. The Advent calendar is another one that she's put out again this year, but I'm specifically talking about the eyeshadow palette. So this is available right now, but this is a gorgeous palette. I can't wait to review it for you guys. I've definitely dipped into it a little bit already and found one dupe for sure for one shade, but there's actually a lot of differences in this palette as well. So we'll talk about all of that for sure. There's also the Hollywood Blush and Glow Glide palettes. These are duos. I do have both of them just so you guys can see. One of them is for fair medium. The other one is marked tan deep. And when you see the swatches, you will know for sure that they are definitely meant for that. The way that she's put them together. Blush and glows are kind of hard to open. My nails aren't even that long. Can you guys see? They're not even that long. And I actually take my tweezers and open them from time to time. Most of the time. It's just that you have to be careful not to stab the product in the middle, but this is the tan to deep one. You can see it's a beautiful terracotta blush, and then we also have a golden highlight. And this one here is the fair to medium. This one has a beautiful coral pink blush. We also have kind of like a pinky silver highlight, very reminiscent of her other Pillow Talk highlights. We'll talk about that for sure. So those are the two cheek palettes this year that are new. And then we've also got this eyeshadow palette. So I'm going to put it on the face, of course. I don't have any makeup on right now, as you can tell. But this is typical of Charlotte Tilbury, not last year actually. Last year she did single shadows. The year before that and previous years when she would do an eyeshadow palette, it would be basically something like this, where she would have 12 shades and she would put them in basically groups of 3 and kind of calling them each a look. So this is an example of a holiday palette, discontinued now. This one is called the Bejewels Eyes to Hypnotize. Sometimes in her sales, you will see these palettes pop up from time to time. So I wouldn't say they're like fully discontinued, but you know, they're supposed to be. So this one is Happy Glow, the look here. This one's Love Glow, Dream Glow, and Seduce Glow. And she's purposely put them in this kind of arrangement so that you can actually put a look together really easily. So it's meant for experts as well as beginners to put looks together. So that was an eyeshadow palette typically for her. And then last year she came out with these single shadows that she called the Hypnotizing Pop Shots. And this is the shadow here. So it was very shimmery. In my opinion, it was best used for a fingertip application just because of kind of having that maximum pigment impact. It was really nice to lift that off with a fingertip and then placing it on the lid. You did have a little bit of fallout doing this, but with the brush there was a lot more. But I really liked this for that. If you were hands-on with your eyeshadow application, these were beautiful, but they were single shadows and kind of pricey. So that was her eyeshadow thing for last holiday. Now this is this year's. This is called, okay, the Beautyverse palette. I love her names for things. They're so cute. So we do have a number of beautiful shimmer detailing on the cover. For size, I know a lot of you guys were saying this reminds you of a Huda Beauty palette. We'll talk about why, but this is actually the same size as her other face palettes have been. So kind of an example here is this one. This is the Pillow Talk Beautifying Face Palette that she released a little while ago, and it's the exact same size. So for size comparison, we're talking about a big face palette, not a tiny palette. When we look at the Huda Beauty palettes and how they're structured, these are 9-pan palettes. This is from Huda Beauty. As an example here, this is the Nude Light palette, and it's pretty tiny compared to the Charlotte one. When you first get the palette, there is an insert, and it shows you all of the shades as well as the types of shades. But when you open it up, this is what you see. So this is why people were like, oh my gosh, this is totally a Huda Beauty palette. It's structured the same way. It is. It's, you know, 3 rows of 3, but I do think this is not only just a Huda Beauty thing, this is also an eyeshadow palette structure. So I wouldn't call it a complete copy. It's not even the same size, but I can see the resemblance for sure because Huda Beauty does a lot of these palettes, and so she's basically known for this type of figuration. The Charlotte one, though, is so beautiful, you guys. Okay, I have to share with you. Her products get me every year. I really, really love these. I do think this is a beautifully structured palette. I do like how there are 3 different types of shadows in here. So she calls the finishes future mattes. There are 4 of them in this palette. So we do have the first row entirely, plus the pink of the second row. Then we have what she calls a crystal glow. This formulation to me is similar to the Hypnotizing Pop Shots. Similar. It's a little bit thinner than these, but I do think it has a little bit of that same quality. Really foiled, really sparkly, has a gorgeous creamy gel-like kind of texture. So that's kind of the formulation that I'm thinking of when I think of this palette with regards to the crystal glows. We also have one party topper, she calls it. The party topper is over here. This is by far the sheerest of all of the shimmers because it's meant to be a topper. There is one shade here. I'm going to show you guys the swatches right now. We have the 4 mattes in this palette. We have the 4 crystal glows, 1 party topper, but that purple shade, in my opinion, is a little bit more of a sheerer crystal glow. So in my opinion, it's a little bit leaning closer to the party topper type formulation because it's just a little bit more sheer of a pigmentation. The mattes as well, especially the browns, the top row, when I was removing my swatches off of my arm, I noticed they were leaving a little bit of a stain behind. So that's also something to consider as well. Hopefully that's going to play into the longevity of the pigment on your lid. Before we get into the cheek products, I want to talk about the price. Because everybody's like, with the price. It's true. She's jacking up the prices every year. I think it just speaks to the demand for her products and the fact that, you know, inflation, or that she can. I don't know. The price of this is $75 US or 95 Canadian dollars for the conversion there. So it is kind of steep, but I remember her eyeshadow palettes in the past being similar. I'm going to see if we get the same amount of product because I'm just kind of curious. So the total amount of product, for those of you guys that are interested, is 9 grams total. Each one of these pans is 1 gram. So there's 9 grams total in this one. Kind of for your, you know, if you're kind of into like the details, kind of nerdy vibes like me, this one is a full 9.5. So in the past, her eyeshadow palettes offered about 0.5 of a gram more weight. However, that is kind of different when it comes to how much each of the formulations weigh, because each formulation weighs differently. Some are lighter, some are heavier. So I would just go over like, how much are you going to use this palette? That is basically how I would evaluate any purchase at all. Obviously, if it's like significantly more, significantly less, that's a problem, but we're talking about 0.5 of a gram. For me, it's like, is that just playing into the differences in the formulations? Because there's different formulations in these 12-pan palettes also. Let's get on to applying. I'm going to first prime my lids. I'm actually going to use the Smashbox 24-hour primer, one of my favorites. This is really underrated, to be honest. People that, okay, maybe this is empty now. That's why. Okay, I was able to squeeze some out, so we're good. But I really like this one because it's so smooth. It just like glides over my lids and it doesn't drag, moisturizes really well. I already have my brows done also, so that's good. But it just smooths over. I have a lot of favorites for primers. I have the City Beauty eye treatment. That lid treatment's really gorgeous. Also the Milani. The Milani from the drugstore is actually a pretty good dupe. So for this, I'm going to be using the Lawless powder with a Wayne Goss brush. We're just going over that. Just setting that primer. You actually don't have to set this one, but I'm just doing that to be thorough. I have to tell you guys about this Future Matte formulation. Now you guys might be wondering, is this sponsored? No. I would love to work with Charlotte Tilbury, but this is not sponsored. I actually do get PR from her from time to time, which I'm very thankful for. This collection, however, was released at Holt Renfrew, which is a Canadian retailer, this past weekend, a little bit early. So thank you to my subscriber for letting me know that I was able to order it. So this has been purchased with my own money. Although PR does not make a difference because I'm always honest, but I just wanted to give you guys that disclaimer. So this Future Matte formula, to me, is almost not even a true 100% matte. This has a creaminess to it that makes it absolutely stunning when you actually swatch it. So when you swatch it, you will see it almost feels like it has a little bit of that putty sensation, like as you're moving your finger in the pan. It also has, because of that creaminess, it has a little bit of a sheen to it. So it's not like a full powdery matte, in my opinion. When you actually see them, it's very sheeny. That's kind of the way to look at it. So as you can see, this is applying really nice, but it is on the thinner side. No fallout either. I can't see anything as of yet, so we are doing good there also. So basically, I am putting this middle shade in the top row. This one is called Supernova Suede, and if you're following along, it's right here in the top here. So I didn't want to do something too dark or too cool toned. The other one is kind of cooler. This one's more, the other one on the other side is more of like a rich chocolatey brown. This one has a little bit more of that neutral quality in this palette. So we're doing this one, and then we're going to put some shimmers over top of it. So this is kind of, in my opinion, if I'm envisioning looks with this palette, this is how I'm using it. I'm putting one of those mattes on as a base layer, and then I'm putting the shimmers over top. You can put a matte all over the lid, put some shimmer, put a matte on the outer corner of your lid as well. You can do a lot with this. Just so you guys are wondering, I was kind of getting some feedback from you guys that maybe this isn't like super creative of a palette, but I actually think it's pretty useful. So it just depends on how you build your looks. Typically, if you're not into shimmer though, obviously this is not a good idea. You could try going for the Patrick Ta All Matte palette, for instance, because that would probably appeal more to your matte preference there. You can see it's actually layering really beautifully. I feel like I have a lot of control, like I said, and that sheeniness is giving it a little bit more of that creaminess as I'm applying it too. I think that creaminess speaks to also the fact that there is very little fallout, simply because it's just not a powdery formulation, so it's just not falling all over my face as easily. The shimmer that I want to use is actually on the bottom corner here. This is one of the Crystal Glows. This one is called Golden Galaxy. So I think this is going to pair beautifully with our look. I'm actually applying this with a fingertip, and look at that. That is so gorgeous. So you can see here that it's doing a great job of layering over top of that matte. As you swatch it in the pan, has a little bit of a texture to it. You can almost feel slightly some of those crystal granules, but it's still really soft. It's definitely layering beautifully over top of that base layer. If you didn't have that brown, you would have a little bit more of a sheer look, right? If you were just doing the Crystal Glows by themselves, you would have to build them up a little bit more. Now, kind of at baseline, I'm going to be totally honest with you guys. The quality is there. This is a gorgeous look, but can you mimic it with other palettes? Yes, most likely you can. These golden shimmers are everywhere, as are the matte browns. I think the thing that distinguishes this palette over others is how creamy the mattes are. It's definitely more of a unique formula with that sheeniness. And the Crystal Glows also are, of course, a unique formulation to Charlotte. If you are a Charlotte Tilbury fan and you look forward to the holiday releases, this is definitely a beautiful, high-quality palette. But like when it comes to uniqueness, this is a look I could probably do with other palettes pretty easily. So it's more on the safe side when it comes to the shades that she's chosen. Just because I want to play around with this palette a little bit more, I want to put on the Party Topper over top. The Party Topper is that silver on the right side of the middle row. This one is called Beautyverse. Oh yeah, that's really beautiful. It's actually not as sheer when applied as I thought it would be. It definitely holds its own. This one to her is her like topper shade. So it is, when you're actually swatching it, it's the sheerest shimmer out of the 5 in this palette. This would be a beautiful look just by itself. I'm actually going to take that light brown matte and put it on the bottom lid, and then I'm also going to add another matte, I think, in the outer corner, just because we're going to continue to test all of these shades, make sure they're all made equally with the same strength. I was wondering how a synthetic brush was going to pick up the pigment, because the Wayne Goss brush I used for all over the lid there, that is a natural haired, and oftentimes you do have a difference between the two. This one actually still picks up that matte really, really nicely. So it doesn't matter which brushes you have at home. you can still get a great quality application with either one. We are adding in some depth with this chocolate brown on the far right. This is called Space Chocolate. I almost said Space Cowboy, that Urban Decay shade. Just what I think of when I think of space. Be really careful with this, going in with more of a detailed brush. You can see it's adding some nice warmth, some nice depth, and you can see here there's quite a bit of pigmentation with these. So I think this palette it's really fun to play with. I think the quality is there. She's grounded this palette beautifully with shades that we all use, so I do think she knows what she's doing when it comes to picking shades that most of the population would probably want. I think for uniqueness, though, we probably have similar palettes, right? So like for makeup junkies, this is something we've seen before. But she's also speaking to the people that only buy one palette a year, right? Or they just want one holiday palette. This is actually going to be really nice. It's got those jewels of, you know, beautiful wearable shimmers. They're very like holiday friendly shades. So here is the eye look. I actually think it's really, really beautiful. But like I said, can you mimic this as other palettes? Oh, I'm sure. But this would be something like a very wearable look that I would wear out for sure. Matches my nice top here as well. So we're gonna get to the rest of the look here, but really, really beautiful. I wonder if I should add even more shimmer just because I'm kind of really curious how it would look. But am I going to mess this up? I kind of want to add some of this nice purple. Okay, let's do it. Ooh, I kind of like that. Let's keep that just for that half. So even that just like spiced it up, right? And made it look even more unique. But I better stop here. But this looks gorgeous. The shade I added was called Digital Lilac. If you are wondering about the quality is definitely there. I would say if you are a fan of these palettes, you think you'll get a lot of use out of it. I do think it is a lovely one to pick up for the holiday season for sure. And I love this look here. It's so beautiful. Those mattes are easy mattes that everybody uses. So I think she did a great job with that. But because everybody uses them, you're going to see them in other palettes as well. So just kind of decide for yourself if it's worth the purchase. Before we get into the cheek palettes, because I looked kind of through the hypnotizing pop shots from last year to see if any of them resembled these kind of like jewel type shimmer shades in here. And the one at the very bottom, the Golden Galaxy, the one that I put all over my lid first, it's this one here in the far right corner. This one is nearly identical to her hypnotizing pop shot in rose gold. So this one here. There's slight similarities between them, but on the eye, they're going to look identical. So just so you guys know, she's kind of pulled a little bit of inspiration from the hypnotizing pop shots with regards to this shade, but I checked every other one and I didn't see anything else that was remotely close. So it's kind of nice if you did get the pop shots last year, you don't have a ton of overlap with this palette. Let's try out the cheek palettes next. So this is the Hollywood Blush and Glow Glide palette. Really, really like the reflective rose gold packaging. However, you guys, these are definitely tougher to open for me for some reason. Like I said in the beginning of the video, it was just tough to get right in there with my nail, but I think I'll just figure out a way to get them open. These are super pigmented. When I swatched these, the pigment that came off of that blush really, really fast and very coral, vibrant pink. I was like, uh-oh. When I pick this up, it better be light-handed. So that's the fair to medium. And then the tan to deep is this one with that really beautiful, rich terracotta blush. And we also have the highlight there. I am going to go so light, you guys. It's not even funny. The tiniest dab. Literally tiniest. Because I want to, whoop, all right. Interesting. It's a little bit of a patchy application to start. But is it my brush? I'm going to double check it's not my brush. I'm gonna try another brush actually. This is the Beautiful Together It Cosmetics Heavenly Luxe Soft Focus Blush Brush. I don't know if I like this, guys. I could be applying this wrong or whatever, but this is looking kind of patchy. I'm gonna soften it. One of my tricks is to take some powder. So I'm using the Lawless one in light, and I'm just gonna kind of go over that because it's quite stark. Maybe then I can buff it and blur it a little bit, but it should not be that hard to do. Okay, so this one's applying a little bit better. I'm using more of a fluffier brush for this though, but I don't know if I'm the biggest fan of this shade of pink here. The only thing though is there is a dupe for this. I found this, it's not quite with the blush shade, but in the Pillow Talk Beautifying Face Palette, if you actually open it up, I'm going to show you guys the swatches as well, but this blush here is similar to this one, and then this highlight here, the Pillow Talk kind of pinky, is also similar to this one. So if you happen to have this palette, you could easily skip the blush duo only because it was very, very similar. Okay, so I looked at my cheeks again in natural light, and you know what? It doesn't look that bad, but I still say that these duos are probably not as beginner friendly as I would like. I do find that blush, if you're not careful, it can appear patchy depending on how you apply it. So if you are a little bit more of an amateur or you're a beginner in makeup, you might kind of look a little bit patchier. It's not super foolproof in my opinion. I don't know why, but for some reason it did seem to cling to drier portions of my face. I really felt like I kind of had to do a bit of a beat, if you know what I mean, like really beat it into my skin to make it look even. Kind of doing that multiple times over. So it is a little bit more difficult. It's not a completely terrible blush, but just be careful how you apply it. It is more likely to cling to drier patches, more likely to look patchier upon application. They're not as strong to me. If you could only pick one, the eyeshadow palette or the duos, definitely the eyeshadow palette. These are actually powder products, so they're not cream. The highlights are totally fine. They're very user-friendly. They don't show texture easily, but that blush, it definitely kind of threw me off at first. This color is slightly too bright as well. Personal opinion, it would definitely look a lot better with an all-over pink eye, but if you're going for more of like that brown chocolatey look, it's a little bit bright. So you couldn't always pair the two together if you were putting a look together and you wanted more of those brown mattes. This to me looks a tad too bright pink. It'll clash with your eye a little bit. Do prep your skin well, make sure it's not dry, otherwise it will have a bit of an opportunity to cling. So because of the high maintenance piece of this, and there's also a dupe on the market already that she's going to come out with again and again, those Pillow Talk products will never end in my opinion. You can skip the duos. Personally, I also find this packaging a little bit hard to open. Not a terrible product overall. I'm glad that I was able to make it work, but it is prone to looking a little sloppy. This eyeshadow palette is much more beginner friendly and definitely worth a nice little splurge this holiday if you are interested. Really hope this review was helpful for you guys, and until my next one, don't forget to subscribe. We will see you again soon. Bye guys!